These morons don't understand what they're doing because they want to be in charge. They don't care about the people that they work with. And they've proven it time and time again. They're willing to sacrifice them for their own personal gain, for their own personal ideas, irregardless of what you're being supported by the customers.
You see him as the guy that would eventually gain that moniker, or did you see someone else or even yourself actually become that guy?
No, I saw it was AJ because their company made it clear who their pick was. There was favoritism right out the gate.
Right.
They knew who they wanted, so that's who they promoted, and that's who they pushed. But they wanted Alex Riley. That was clear to see from FCW and the way they were booking him and the way that they were offering him positions. So they wanted Alex Riley to succeed, but he wasn't seasoned. He wasn't matured.
Yeah, something I do want to ask you about, and I never got to ask you about last time, was the TNA video game.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, you was one of the biggest parts of it, Suicide and the mocap and all the voice work.
Yeah.
How was it getting into doing that video game, and how much fun did you actually have doing it?
Oh, we had a blast making that game. And the way that it came about was because Midway was contracted to create the game. So they actually visited us at Universal Studios, began doing the 3D rendering with the machine that would be circling our heads in order to get the 3D rendering accuracy for the skins that they would place over the computerized bodies. So they came to Universal, they visited us, they spent time with us. The crew that we had grew up on video games, including Mortal Kombat, NFL Blitz, Killer Instinct, all the coin-op games, the arcade games. And we hit it off really well with Sal DeVita. So from visiting us at Universal Studios, Sal was the one who actually contacted me in regards to my voice. So one day he contacted me and asked, would I be interested in doing a cold read for the character? And it took, I want to say maybe a week or two, and they had me do a conference call where I read some of the script, and they based their decision off of that read with Ed Boon and the rest of the creators of the game. And I got the go ahead to be the voice of the Suicide character for the TNA video game. Now, from that was one aspect of the game, but we also had the responsibility of motion capture. Now, Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, Sanjay Dutt, Jay Lethal, and I, including some of the locals from Chicago that would help, we all grew up during the development of the actual wrestling games on the different platforms. So I'm an original going all the way back to Atari and Nintendo. So I've been a video game player for a long time to see the evolution of these games. We had the intent on creating such great content that we were going to knock out uh, N64's No Mercy video game, which happened to be the best engine for all of the video games regarding pro wrestling at the time. So that was our intent, to put on the best video game regarding pro wrestling with new characters or new personas, but we wanted the gameplay to be far beyond what No Mercy was, which was based off of the virtual pro wrestling engine from Japan, which was All Japan. So we had a blast trying to put in a whole bunch of content. We did a lot of recording, and just for us all being familiar with the history of pro wrestling in games, we worked really hard to try to put out a game that was higher quality than anything that had been seen at that time. Unfortunately, because of whatever decision making was going on, they were forced to release the game before they actually introduced all the content that we created. So the gameplay was actually subpar off of what we actually produced in the studio. So what you got as a final result was not what all the work that we had put in regarding improving the gameplay to be one of the best games for pro wrestling ever on video game consoles.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense because it was during these days Midway started going belly up basically financially. Obviously, they got incorporated to Warner Brothers and became eventually NetherRealm Studios, and they only do Mortal Kombat now. But no, I remember playing the TNA game,
We
and I
were actually in Mortal Kombat 10. We happened to
that's right,
be
yeah.
on set making the WWE Immortals game for Warner Brothers, and we were in the NetherRealm Studios, and just by chance, Ed Boon came on set with a storyboard and asked Sal DeVita if he could relay it to his guys. So it was actually Micah Taylor, who recently just passed away, and I on set the day that Ed Boon came in. So he came in and asked, do you know these characters? And I said, yes. And he said, would you be able to replicate this? And I looked at the storyboard. I asked him what exactly he was describing. And then I looked at Mike and I go, Benoit style powerbomb into the slingshot. So Mike looks at me, I look at him and go, okay, on one take, we get it done. And Sal DeVita is smiling ear to ear. And he's like, I knew it. I knew it. And Ed tells him, he goes, I don't know what scares me more, the fact that they understood what I said or the fact that they hit it on one take. So
Yeah, true.
we ended up recording uh, things for Reptile and for the Jax character in Mortal Kombat 10. And some of us got the credit for being in motion capture for Mortal Kombat 10, Mortal Kombat X.
Oh wow, awesome. Yeah, Mortal Kombat's just it's one in franchise I've loved. I think I remember playing the original in the arcades. First one
Mhm.
I actually owned home console was number two, and yeah, I've just been a fan ever since. The new movies, not a fan as much. I still prefer me 1995 Annihilation. It's so bad, it's so good to me. But no, that's awesome. But now, the TNA video game, even graphically, to me, it stands up. Like,
Mhm.
you get a screenshot of, say, Booker T,
Mhm.
and you put onto like today's video games with him featuring him. And honestly, like PS3 version of TNA, that stands well up against a lot of today's stuff.
Yep.
Um, Speaking of Booker T, were you in the locker room when Booker T was about, and how was he to work with?
As far as in TNA, that was him coming off of WWE. I didn't interact with him much, but everything was friendly, going about our business. It was more passing through the locker room and things of that nature, but we never really dealt business together. So, I mean, I wouldn't have really much to say about him other than it was just a respectful thing. Um, even his wife, um,
Sharmel.
Shamel, yeah, she was always professionally dressed, carried herself in a professional manner, just friendly. It was nothing in regards to like a negative interaction, but I never really crossed paths with him and for what we were doing in the ring. So it was just more of a friendly passing.
Cool. So, speaking of TNA, so you famously was part of the first match on TNA pay-per-view yourself, AJ and Jerry Lynn against the Flying Elvises.
Mhm.
How did that all come together? You being part of TNA and then being part of the very first match on pay-per-view.
Well, that was more of a timing thing because that was February of 2002, and that was a heavy month for me because I ended up um, I was gaining a lot of momentum out of the Northeast. 2001, I had won the ECWA Super 8 Championship. Um, and then I ended up doing dark matches for WWF at that time. So February of 2002 culminated with Ring of Honor's first event, which I headlined. The following day, we were in Las Vegas for the World Wrestling All Stars pay per view, which I got through, I believe it was Gary Capetta or excuse me, no, Penzer, Dave Penzer, and Bob Ryder helping to get that done with Jeff Jarrett. And
Was that
then,
the show in Australia? Sorry, low key.
no, that's the company that works out of Australia because
Right.
of their owner. But he ran a pay per view in Las Vegas out of, I believe it was the Aladdin Hotel. So
Yes.
we ended up doing a six-man scramble style match, and that was the match that I had right after Ring of Honor, but with the relation to Jeff Jarrett as one of the organizers, that led to the transition in June of 2002 for me to be on board with TNA. And it was just my momentum at that time, which happened to capture a lot of attention simply because at my size, I'm the most aggressive. So it worked out just in regards to timing and, right place, right time with the right elements available.
Yeah. Obviously, another person part of that match was AJ, and
Mhm.
over the years, I guess everyone started calling AJ Mr. TNA. So
Mhm.
when you started off wrestling in TNA, doing their matches, did you see him as the guy that would eventually gain that moniker, or did you see someone else, or even yourself, actually become that guy?
No, I saw it was AJ because the company made it clear who their pick was.
In
There
what
was clear
way?
favoritism right out the gate.
Right.
They knew who they wanted, so that's who they promoted and that's who they pushed. But again, somebody like me, as aggressive as I am and as creative as I am, I was able to take attention away from him. So they had no choice but to mix us up. And I believe the last time we mixed it up in TNA was for the NWA World Title, where he was backed by Vince Russo, and I was coming straight out of Japan off of injuries, and still went at him for an NWA World Title match. But it was clear to see that AJ was the golden boy. We already knew that because just by the presentation and the emphasis that they were making on him. But there's no disregard to AJ because AJ put in the work. He was ready to work with everybody, and it didn't matter who it was, and he pulled out really good matches with everyone.
Are you surprised with the success he had in WWE? Because traditionally, a lot of people, and myself included, thinks if you made your name outside of WWE, in fact, when they do bring you in, they tend to, I don't know, say punish, but not want to push you. I mean, we've seen, for example, a Bobby Roode, who I felt wasn't used to his fullest potential. But when AJ made a jump, he had a great reception from the fans when he debuted, and obviously he became multiple WWE champion and other titles. Did you Was you surprised about the success he ended up having in WWE to say that he was a TNA guy?
No, I wasn't surprised at all because the whole world had seen what they did to me. So that gave an opening for everyone after me to actually stand a chance. They're not going to sit there and allow them to be treated like I was. Me, I quietly allowed them to show their cards of how they treat their people. But physically in the ring, I was still outclassing everybody. AJ's at a higher level. He's at the main event level, but he has the pedigree for that. So he can pull that off. His physicality for being at the main event level is at a higher level than their main eventers. So he's definitely a main event performer, a main event wrestler. It's not a surprise why he was allowed to advance. You can't deny him, and he actually has some moral integrity. Now, again, at the beginning of the 2000s, they tried to hire him and send him to OVW, and he said no because he wasn't going to uproot his family and have his wife not be able to complete law school or whatever college she was going to. So he has some integrity about him to not allow certain things to happen. So his success and advancement, it's far removed from me. He was years after I was there. But even me being removed from WWE, I didn't tone down my skill to accommodate anybody. So his advancement in the WWE wasn't a surprise. It was just a sign of the time. He was capable of doing that, and he rode the momentum that he gained internationally by pulling off the win for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. So now he's on the world main event level. So it's not a surprise. And what are they going to do? They're going to put him in NXT and keep him on a sub card? That would be a slap in the face. And then that would be a miscalculation on the booking strategy because they got a main eventer and now you're keeping him on the undercard. That would show the stupidity of the booking. But then again, they've proven that time and time again.
True. So, speak about your time at NXT. Obviously, this is not the first time us speaking. We spoke on the previous podcast, Cafe de Rene, with Rene Dupree. So, you talked about how during the votes, you led the votes basically every week, and not just by 2 or 3%, but by 30s, 40s%, you was like leading.
Mhm.
So, obviously, the fans was right behind you. But I don't know if you mentioned like the offers. Who were they looking at? Who they wanted to win? Was it Joe Hennig who they was pinning, or was it like
No,
say Alex Riley?
Alex Riley. They
Yeah,
wanted Alex Riley. That was clear to see from FCW and the way they were booking him and the way that they were offering him positions. So they wanted Alex Riley to succeed, but he wasn't seasoned. He wasn't matured. And that was the problem. They were trying to do the same nonsense they did in the 1980s, trying to pull it off in 2009 and 2010, because you got outdated guys in the management calling the shots. And on top of that, they're insulting to the people who are actually being hired to do these jobs by, instead of actually teaching them, they're actually playing these stupid games of political games. So it was clear to see they wanted Alex Riley. There was a reason why I called Joe Henning when I did the TNA freestyle, because they were trying to remove his identity. Yeah, he's the son of Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig. Kurt Hennig was one
yes,
of the legends of the WWF era. He was an attraction and he was highly skilled in that ring. Why would you try to take his identity away from him and give him some stupid name that was an inside joke between Kurt Hennig and Vince McMahon? The public didn't know that, nor do they care. They just know that that's his son. Give him a chance to show how great his lineage is and how good he is in that ring. I knew because I've wrestled and I teamed with him, as evident by him pulling off the perfect plex in the three-way in the final episode of NXT. I'm the one who called that. They were trying to isolate him to not have any relevance to his father. Bullshit. These morons don't understand what they're doing because they want to be in charge. They don't care about the people that they work with. And they've proven it time and time again. They're willing to sacrifice them for their own personal gain or their own personal ideas, irregardless of what you're being supported by the customers. So it was clear to see that they wanted Alex Riley, but Alex Riley is not a seasoned wrestler. He's a guy who was coming out of football from Boston College. So he was another hire by whoever from management, and them thinking that, oh yeah, there's going to be an easy advancement. Meanwhile, he's not commanding presence. Joe Hennig, he has the ability to do so. And then they changed his name again. What they call him, Axel or some dumb name.
yeah, Curtis Axel, yeah,
So this is what I mean. They don't care about the people that they hired. Now they got to play a whole big cleanup of a mess that Vince left behind. And the people who are still attached to that company, they're trying to make sure no one's investigating them. So there's a clear path to see what their intent was. There's a clear path to see who their favorites were. The only way you can get past that, you got to outclass them. I had to do that. And the thing is, I'm not as vocal as everybody else is because I don't really see the need to waste time talking. Just ring the bell. That's the whole idea behind this anyway. But people got caught up in entertainment. You got to understand the etymology behind the word entertainment. Entertain, maintain, meant, mind. So they're trying to maintain your mind. This is mind control to get you to act and behave in a certain way by whoever's commanding the presence in the environment. These are the old carny tactics. That's not what I do. I showcase skill, which is the reason why pro fighting is so popular. You can find that everywhere on the planet. And in different disciplines is even more exciting because the skill sets and the rule sets are different. But what you're seeing, they most certainly had their favorites and they weren't shy about who they were trying to promote. I just happened to overwhelm everybody and work around that.
yeah, because they paired him up with Miz, and Miz, I guess you could say that was his year. He won Money in the Bank. He eventually, end of the year, became WWE champion, and they paired you up with Michelle McCool and Layla. And how was it working with them two? And I would imagine it was pretty easy to work with, or am I wrong?
For me, working with Layla and working with Michelle McCool, it was relaxing because they were so goofy that they would actually tone down my intensity. One, I knew nobody there was my friend. Two, I know the nature of the environment and I know the nature of the people who make the decisions there. These are bad people. So for those two women to actually be as goofy as they were friendly. They weren't headaches. I would help them too. Help them in the ring. We'd warm up. We'd do things. You know, Layla would come and ask me questions about certain moves. So it was a friendly interaction and we developed a friendly chemistry with each other, but we were being manipulated by the morons in management. So you go into NXT, there was one NXT where they had us do a kissing contest. And they had
That's
this
right.
woman who was done up with all this makeup to be hideous and ugly or whatever. And at one point, you see Layla go, "Oh, screw it," and she kisses me. Now everybody went nuts for that, which was great. However, they didn't tell me that was coming, and I have a girlfriend at the time. So you try explaining that to somebody you're with, that they just happened to watch that on national television, and you didn't know it was coming.
Yeah.
So they decided to do something like that on national television without telling me it was coming, which shows you that they have no regard for any of the people they have in their ring. They think they're going to get away doing whatever they want to do, however they want to do it, whenever they want to do it. So dealing with Layla, dealing with Michelle, we were cool. There was no issues with them. But I also understood the positions that they were in. As far as the girls go, they were in the highest position. So I had a good rub off of them from just the relation, but I had to hold my own. And you can see throughout the season, from being a rookie or somebody that they were kind of playing with, towards the end, I was the protector. I was the one who stood in front of them to protect them from anybody advancing on them, which was like Husky Harris or Bray Wyatt. A match that we had where they attacked me afterwards, I protected them from him advancing on them. So it evolved into more of a true environment, which is, well, you have a strong, dominant male who's protecting the women. I was showing those signs. It's the same thing I carried in MLW protecting Salina. So working with Michelle McCool and working with Layla, it was a good environment, at least with our interactions, because we were cool with each other. It wasn't anything disrespectful. It wasn't anything condescending, other than the company telling them they can get away with certain things. But even then, it wasn't really them. They were taking orders from somebody else who was trying to manipulate the situation. And to give you insight to that on how I protected everybody, we did an appearance in 2021 at Water, which is a resort style club in Clearwater Beach. Now, I had it arranged for Salina de la Renta from MLW, myself. We had Miss Tessmacher from TNA. Uh, we had Brooke Hogan. We had brother Nick Hogan. He was DJing, and Layla was a part of the appearance. So she actually, it started raining, so all of us had to end up running indoors. And one of my referees, he happened to have a chance to speak with her and told me after the fact. He goes, "You didn't hear when we were standing behind you. She said something that was really cool." And he goes, "I'm nobody. She doesn't know me, but she came out of nowhere and said, and this is Layla." She goes, "Not for nothing. 10 years ago, he protected us. And this is in 2021. So 11 years later, she felt the need to tell one of my refs that, he was a good dude back then. He was trying to help us. He was trying to protect us."
No,
So
it tells you like how much they thought of you, like even like 10, 11 years later, like that's still stuck in their minds. So obviously they thought a lot of you. You, you just mentioned him, Husky Harris, Bray Wyatt, obviously, since he's sadly passed away.
mhm,
And obviously, fair to say he had a big departure of his character, what it became from when he was during your time. But during your time, could you see that creativity from him, or did he express like creative ideas to you, or did that just, I don't know, just came over time?
His energy was a main event energy. It's that simple. He wasn't afraid at his size. He was young, but he wasn't afraid, which made it more appealing. And at his size, his personality was larger than his body. So there was clear indication that he was going to advance. To what degree? That's always dependent on the decision makers. But from a traditional sense, I would have loved to see him in Japan before WWE, only because that would have been a worldwide phenomenon at a different level, and it would have been his creativity as opposed to being influenced by the WWE.
Yeah, you can only imagine had he left, say, that WWE bubble, what he could have came up with like outside of it. Because even like TNA, like people last few years when they've left, say, a WWE, they've been able to explore their ideas and play around with more possibilities. But with WWE, there is that restriction on what ideas you can come up with or be allowed to use. Did you find that
Mhm.
yourself?
Well, I tried to maximize every opportunity I had in WWE. Every match after I won NXT, I always came back with a script of where to go next, and I incorporated everything that they had tried to throw at me. They had me losing all of my matches. They had me in throwaway matches that had no advancement potential, but they were just bare matches. So I was still having decent matches with everybody, but I wasn't excelling. So every match that I had on SmackDown, I wrote into a script and documented everything in order to use everything that they threw at me to develop into me going into the Survivor Series. And then from the Survivor Series leading into WrestleMania, where I would end up getting Rey Mysterio fired and end up becoming a bad Rey Mysterio clone. And then it would have led to Rey Mysterio versus Rey Mysterio at WrestleMania, mask versus mask, because I can match him in almost everything that he does physically. So I actually came back with better ideas than the own writing team. Ray actually hooked up a conference call between he and I and Michael Hayes. I made the pitch with all the information that incorporated everyone from John Morrison to Del Rio to the dramatic effect of why I aligned with Del Rio to take Ray out and get him fired, which ultimately led to the exposure of why all of this has happened. And Michael Hayes said, "Wow, that was really well thought out. Thank you for doing that." And what did they do? They took that idea and they gave it to CM Punk, which had him putting on a mask, of which ultimately Big Show ends up taking off that mask. So these scumbags are so inept in their jobs, they're taking other people's ideas and trying to pass them off as if they are theirs. But I know my stuff well enough to know the elements involved you cannot replace with somebody else. So the way that I wrote everything out was specific to skill sets. And they screwed that up because that was a throwaway angle that they had with CM Punk and Big Show. So we had a money match potential of Ray versus Ray. You take the mask off of me at WrestleMania, and now who do you have? It's either Kaval or Low Key. Low Key would have fit better as far as holy shit, that's him. And then now we would have had mileage with Low Key as a heel versus Rey Mysterio as a babyface and run that bitch for another year. But this is what I'm talking about. Everything that I had to go through in that company, I had answers for to try to improve upon. And I was still being met with resistance. I was still being met with the carny nonsense from these office people. Hell, I had one of the writers tell me, with your qualifications, if this was any other job, you would have been brought in as a CEO. But for whatever reason, they bring you in as a rookie.
Yeah, that you just something and just triggered my mind. The good Rey Mysterio say that against the evil Rey Mysterio, and I'm trying to think of the timeline, but it might be a year or two later that actually used that idea for evil.
Mystical.
Like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, good and bad Sin Cara.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's another example of them taking that idea as well.
Yep. But this is what I mean. I know my history. I grew up in this. I grew up watching this. I know my business better than most of these carny people because they don't anyone else's business but their own stability. They are willing to sacrifice everyone in their path as long as they can get what they want and as long as they can cover their tracks for all the bad stuff they've done and really should be held accountable for. That's the
Well,
reason why these idiots want to talk badly about me. They're real friendly when I'm in the room, but for whatever reason, they feel the need to open their mouths about me. And if we go back to the 1980s and before that, grown men don't speak about other grown men unless they know what's coming. So why is this any different now? Oh, because everyone downplayed the disrespect. Oh, because these people over here allowed this person to get away with disrespect. They made him believe he can come over here and treat this person with disrespect. This is what I covered in the last interview we did. They're acting like this isn't disrespect. So then when somebody comes in and goes, hey, cut it out, knock it off. Oh, he's difficult. Oh, he's a problem. Oh, we can't deal with him. You got to blackball him. No, I actually deal with respect and I deal with self-respect. I'm a professional at what I do. I'm not an entertainer. I'm not captivating somebody in order to manipulate their emotional behavior. I'm not doing that. I'm a master at what I do because I choose to master everything I'm involved in. This is what real martial arts is. This is what real professionalism is. You look at Candyman, Brad Armstrong from the Armstrong
yes.
family. People still talk about him to this day because of how highly skilled he was, how good he was in the ring. He wasn't cutting promos and yelling this Saturday night. No, he was physically just outclassing people in that ring as a thing of beauty. But you look at his legacy, he matched up against legends and looked great against all of them. Well, that's Brad Armstrong, the Candyman. That's a master. They still talk about him to this day. And this is far removed from him passing. So, I mean, it doesn't have to turn into an environment full of personalities because all these personalities, it looks like they're emphasizing so much on personality, they all suck in the ring, but nobody's saying anything. Everyone's just carrying on like, oh, it's okay, because they get to disrespect the people who look like they're silly in the ring or unqualified. So now this is going back to what I said, the sadomasochism. Well, I'm paying for these guys to embarrass themselves, so go ahead. If this was established respect, this would be a whole different environment.
Yeah, it's your last interview we done, like there was so much feedback, like from both sides, but a lot of people was like, yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about and he means what he says. And that's
Mhm.
what I found. Some people, when you speak, I think some people might think, oh, this guy is arrogant. To me, when you speak, everyone pays attention for one thing.
Yes.
And when you speak to me, you sound like someone that confident what he says and who's serious and he knows what he's talking about. Now, does that rub people off the wrong way? Possibly so, but to me, I'm listening to someone who knows exactly what's happening, and what he's talking about. So that's why I can listen to you all day.
Yeah. But this is, I've said it before to other people. It's not really me. I just happen to be the medium. It's the truth. The truth resonates with everyone because it's the one frequency that everyone can resonate with. If you're in denial about it, of course it's going to irk you. And don't think I don't read the comments. There's a lot of these people who are running their mouths because it irks them the way that I'm speaking. Well, the truth does that to people who are supporting lies, especially if it disturbs your illusion. Now, again, you're mad at me. I wasn't the one abusing women. I wasn't the one getting pulled over for DW or DUIs or DWIs. I wasn't the one failing tests. I wasn't the one getting in trouble in public or in the airport and causing bookings to be changed. But people want to be mad at me because they want to keep a hold of those lies that they're believing. I just happen to disturb a lot of the people who are now realizing and recognizing a lot of the things that they supported, they were supporting bad people. One of the questions on the interview was from a person who said that growing up they looked up to Mr. McMahon and now their childhood sucks. Well, you didn't know anything about that because those bad people hid those things, and then through their arrogance they exposed themselves. Now you look into today's modern world, guess what's happening in the entertainment business? It looks like Diddy has videotapes on a whole bunch of different people that's about to shake up their whole world. At least me, I've been speaking the truth since day one, and I'll speak the truth to power. But I seem to be one of the few who will do it on his own without a support system. And then when the people who are in power, because they've been manipulating and lying to people and abusing people and disrespecting people for such a long time, it's like Stockholm syndrome. These people are comfortable with all that abuse. They're comfortable with all those lies. So you have somebody who's coming and destabilizing all of that comfort. Of course, he's going to be the enemy. Of course, they're going to start turning on him because now he's a threat to their emotional perception. So I'm not speaking anything in creative ways. I'm simply telling people the truth. And of course, that's going to irk people who don't want to believe it.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it was today. Was it today or yesterday? There's been some fresh allegations towards Vince. Well, lawsuit even like towards Vince, Linda, and TKO. Oh, ring boy scandal. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, this is what people didn't understand. The entertainment business is a human trafficking business. I mentioned it time and time again within the past few years. It's a soft version of human trafficking. But now, because that's the language that's now more available on the mainstream, now you're getting insight into the inner workings of how things were done in the past. I just happen to be the person who articulate things in a gentle way, but still people didn't want to hear it. So you got the whole ring boy thing going on from the 1980s. The suspicion was, at least from what I heard, the suspicion was you had somebody in production as well as one of the WWE Hall of Famers, which would round up local young boys, 18-year-olds or around that age. And they would give them work, but they would manipulate them and abuse them. How true is that? We're going to have to find out through the investigations. But just that allegation alone doesn't look good. Then you have that Hall of Famer with a notorious history within the company. And to give you an idea, while we were in NXT, while we were in FCW, that WWE Hall of Famer thought it was appropriate to tell all the guys who were in WWE NXT Season 2 a sexualized joke that the punchline had everyone just go and walk away. So this is something that's been in existence for a long time, but the public is fighting it because they were responsible for funding it. And they don't want to see themselves as being complicit in its operation. That's why I said when people leave this company and they speak badly about it, everyone's treating them like, oh, they're just bitter. Oh, they're just not happy because they didn't get their way. You didn't see what those men and women had gone through, but now it seems to be like all these stories are starting to pop up now. So now you're going to start hearing about the stuff that went on in the 1980s. Ooh, the 1990s ain't any better. Now you get to the 2000s, you got stuff that's a little closer to today's modern world, especially with the women who are involved, like Ashley Massaro. Oh, somebody's going to be mad at somebody. And I'm not
Yeah,
the one who's the catalyst for it. I just happen to be around listening and knowing about all of this. So when I have the ability to actually articulate it, I do it in a gentle way. And even then, I'm condemned. Why? Because all the bad people who are in charge, they're all threatened because it looks like accountability could be on its way to all of them.
yeah. Apparently, there's another Vince documentary coming out, and I know some people who's going to be involved in it, and it's not going to be a fluff piece at all.
Well, Somebody had told me about the Netflix series that they did on Vince. I don't buy it one bit because they're going to be leaving out a whole ton of information, a whole ton of information. Like, I'll give you an example. We had a WWE Hall of Famer tell us while we were in Japan that they were making their way up from one event to the next town, and they happened to stop by uh, Vince's location. And when they did that, they arrived unannounced. So when the door was opened after knocking, they happened to see a WWE Hall of Famer on the sofa, a WWE wrestler on the bearskin rug, and all the people in the room in their underwear. So they just casually said goodbye and kept moving. So this is the nature of this environment of abuse, but that's what entertainment has become over an extended period of time. Does it mean that it's all entertainment? No, no, but it's a high percentage of it. You look at Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, Christina Aguilera, all these kids, Drew Barrymore, all these kids in entertainment, look at all the trouble that they've gone through as adults. Look at the transition of them being innocent kids to troubled adults. This is a sequence and pattern of events that has been in existence for a long time. Hell, look at Shirley Temple, a 3-year-old doing movies where her character is a prostitute, a baby prostitute, where she's singing and dancing for grown men. No one is putting this together. Then you fast forward to where now, a couple of years back, people are starting to recognize the holiday music. What is it, baby? It's cold outside,
Yeah.
and they're starting to listen to the lyrics. Then you there's a one recently that I saw, which was Billy Joel. Billy Joel putting out a song where he's talking about a little girl. Is your daddy home?
Oh wow.
And I got these weird feelings. So you see, this has been in existence for a long time, but people have been asleep or unconscious because entertainment, from the etymology of the word, is mind control. If you're dealing with professionals, it's skill display, not mind control. They're not manipulating. That's where the carnival tactics come into play. They call you a mark because X marks the spot. They're using you to extract something, whether it's money, attention, use you as a catalyst for the rest of the crowd. These are highly deceptive, clever, intelligent people, but they're manipulating. There's a difference between convincing and showing. Professionals display, they show what they're good at. The manipulators, they got to convince you that they're at that level. So there's a big difference with all this entertainment. Now, all of this stuff is beginning to reveal itself. And unfortunately, because of the lack of maturity, the emotional maturity and the emotional discipline of the people who spend a lot of time with the entertainment, they're going to have a hard time adjusting to the truth, which is what I said about Stockholm syndrome. They're going to humanize their abusers so that they don't feel as bad about what they tolerated.
No, it's interesting when you look at it, and obviously all the Diddy stuff coming out. But I don't. It's weird because people try to hide it, but I think especially with Diddy, like we've heard like how many recordings he's got off like big people. So, and I believe he's even on suicide watch as well. Like, because is he still in prison? Is he still in
Yeah,
cast?
yeah. He's
And
still in custody. He's on suicide watch, but realistically, everyone knew he was an informant working with the feds the entire time. So it could have been a honey trap that was involving everybody to get dirt on everyone to control everyone. So
right.
it looks like the same style of Epstein's blackmail manner to have dirt on everyone to keep everybody in line. Now that he's being pinched, everybody is worried that everything that they did that's on video or that they've done illegally is now about to come out because he's going to try to preserve himself more so than anyone else.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So you got politicians, you got royalty. Prince Harry was just named as one of the defendants. So you're going to have a whole mess coming out. But ultimately, this is for the exposure of the child in human trafficking. So that's what I mean. This is such a large interwoven web of corruption and criminal behavior. The average person who doesn't want to do any research, they're going to fall apart mentally. So that's why it's
Yeah.
been done gently and slowly over the past couple of years. Why do you think the Epstein list hasn't been released? They understand what they're doing, but they understand they don't want a civil war to break out with people who are emotionally just uncontrollable and they all start going on the attack and start hunting. So it has to be done in an organized fashion. And now the public has more of a conditioned acceptance for those subjects. And they're going to get worse. If you've done any research into the subject matter, it gets really, really bad. And I'm talking about beyond horror movie bad. But the average person doesn't want to consider any of that stuff real because of how raw and vile it becomes.
Yeah, ignorance is bliss sometimes.
Well,
Um,
get ready to get shaken up because it's not going to wait forever.
oh no.
And those who keep fighting it, they're just going to make it worse for themselves. And ultimately, they're going to need help unless they're just going to fall apart and never recover.
Yeah. So let's bring it back to a bit of wrestling.
Mhm,
So your good friends, MVP's just showed up in AEW, and Shelton Benjamin's just showed up.
mhm.
What's your thoughts on them joining AEW, and do you think they can improve the product?
No, because unless either one of them are going for the world championship, it doesn't matter. They're just happy to get a paycheck. Those two guys are on a higher caliber of physicality in the main event realm than anybody they have on their roster. Brian Danielson, he's already too broken up of a body to handle heavyweights on a regular basis. So he would have a hard time dealing with guys of a larger size. MVP, I think he's a recent black belt. I don't buy it one bit, but he's put in his work. So, as a physical dude about 250 or so, he's going to be hard to deal with on a regular basis if he stays healthy. Then you got Shelton Benjamin. Shelton Benjamin is college level wrestler, coach for Brock Lesnar. His psychology and his technique, he's maintained his health throughout his career, so he's even more of a threat. Now, if Lashley ended up over there, I would be a nightmare for everybody on the roster because there's nothing anybody would be able to do about that unless they come from a pedigree like myself or guys of their size. And that's going to be hard to come by because instead of being in pro wrestling, all the guys of that size are going to fighting or other sports. So to me, is if neither one of them are going after the world title, it's a waste of time. They look like they're collecting a paycheck. They look like they're happy to be on board. Well, then there's a reason why they're not world champions. But to me, with their pedigrees, there's no other place for them to go other than the world title. And ultimately, are they showing up together as friends or are they like a group or something? Because the whole idea is you should be able to go after the world championship yourself and stand on your own 2 feet. Because if you're not, then MVP looks like he's still doing what he's been doing for the past 10, 15 years, which is aligning himself with a group instead of standing on his own 2 feet. Shelton Benjamin, he's an assassin. That dude is bad. So he should be going after the world title. But that's just from a professional sports standard. If we were doing international sport, those two guys reasonably are your two next challengers for the world championship. Can Danielson handle that? I don't really see it, especially now, because his body's going through hell and he's been abusing his body against lesser quality guys. Now you increase the size and power with these guys with the ability of technique. That's not going to look good.
Yeah, I think might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Danielson might be finished now, unless he does some sort of return angle. Because at the minute they're doing this group with like say Moxley taking over AEW, but it's the third group in as many months that's threatened to take over AEW.
Mm.
So when I'm watching AEW, when I do watch them, at the minute the company seems creatively bankrupt. It's like they're repeating the same ideas, but not over the course of years, but actually over the course of months.
Yes. That's lack of leadership. They don't know what
What
they're
would
doing. So they're trying to do whatever they can. And if it's a repeated process, they're just repeating the same thing over and over again, trying to see what sticks to the wall. So that's poor leadership or lack of leadership right there. I can fix that shit real quick. Start cutting people from that roster. We're going to shake this thing up real quick. Because that's well, somebody told me the other day that what, Luchasaurus is sick now too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He's done, or he's sick with pneumonia or something like that. Like,
Yeah, something bad that they discovered him rather in a hotel room, something like that, but he was basically collapsed. I think it might be pneumonia, but I might be wrong.
okay, so remember, AEW, WWE, TNA, Ring of Honor, all these companies, including the Japanese companies, they made their wrestlers, their staff, they made them cover up their faces day in and day out, breathing in their own carbon dioxide. They also made them get injected. They also made them take PCR tests. So you think that these people might be of ill health for a particular reason, but nobody wants to bring that up because they just, oh, just don't say anything. We're making money, right? Yeah, nobody wants to bring those things up as if they'd never happened. That shows you the lack of leadership. During the lockdowns, I was trying to warn everybody. I even sent messages directly to all the bosses online saying that you guys may want to look into this information because it kind of makes you look like criminals. So if you thought Vince and Linda and everyone else at TKO were worried about a human trafficking bid, they're going to have to worry about something else in regards to a class action lawsuit if all those wrestlers and staff decide to sue all of them for medical intervention violating the Nuremberg codes. So this is what I mean. Everybody wanted to continue entertainment, disregarding the dangers of the real world. I was trying to warn everybody not to get them hurt. I was trying to warn everybody to keep them away from all this negative lying, the stuff that was coming down the pipe that was going to hurt them. But okay, well, it is what it is. Just keep going. No, there's a difference between entertainers and professionals. Professionals get results because it's skill based, merit based. Entertainers, they got to convince you of how good they are. And what they're doing is tapping into the lower realm, their emotion, not respect. They're not building integrity. They're making people ooh and ah like children. So they're basically insulting your intelligence by treating you like children. That's not how this is supposed to be. The legends are in legendary status because there's a degree of respect and integrity that holds them there. And it's a shame because it didn't have to be this way. It's a shame because these men and women who are in the ring now are murdering their bodies for people who are going to replace them at the drop of a hat when they don't get what they want.
True. Well, before we go, Loki, and thank you so much for your time, got one last fun question for you. Who is your wrestling Mount Rushmore?
That's a tough one because I've always
I know.
treated everyone different. Everyone brings something different to the table, just like a fingerprint. I've been in the ring with some of the greatest of all time. Some of the greatest of all time I was never able to encounter. I looked up to Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, Too Cold Scorpio. I got to wrestle them. I looked up to Shinya Hashimoto, Keiji Muto, Masahiro Chono, Kenta Kobashi, Mitsuharu Misawa. I looked up to them. I was able to wrestle them. All the legends bring something different to the table. So it's always something special if you can see them match up against each other. Me at my size, I'm not Rey Mysterio. I'm not a constant underdog. I'm usually the offensive threat. So having to cut my teeth against guys like Fujiwara from Japan, catch wrestling god, student of Karl Gotch, Minoru's teacher, I had to learn. Going against Hashimoto, I had to learn. Hell, I got a win over Liger. I had to learn. There's a rich history on the sports side that people disregard for the entertainment side. The sports side is where everyone was able to make a living and do it with respect and honor. That's where I function. So, in regards to your Mount Rushmore, it's kind of hard because there's so many different elements of people who stand out at different times. Reasonably, Karl Gotch would have to be on there. He's the godfather of Japanese pro wrestling. He was the one teaching Inoki. So Karl Gotch, I would say, would be one. Moving into the different generations, as far as me personally, I would say the Great Muta. As far as personality standout, attack standout. Then you have Tiger Mask, one, Sayama. He wasn't just a masked wrestler, he was a catch wrestler, as evident in UWFI or UWF. He wasn't a gimmick, he could fight. And then as far as a fourth placement, just for outlasting everybody, I would say Kenta Kobashi, just off the top of my head. Working with him, competing against him, he was the one who showed me how to engage better with the knife edge chop. So at my size, I can crack somebody pretty strongly, but it's because of technique learned from Kenta Kobashi. So they would be on my Mount Rushmore. But even then, it's a very difficult position to put people on because there's so many great qualities of different people over different generations that it's almost unfair, excuse me, almost unfair to narrow it down to 4 people.
Oh yeah, it's probably the toughest question in wrestling for like, wrestlers or even fans to answer. But I love hearing your explanation was awesome. But it's just great hearing like different opinions on like everyone's each personal Mount Rushmore. And it's always great to listen because no one's Mount Rushmore is ever the same. There's always differences. But the fact that a lot of these people's a lot of these influencers and people you share the ring with, like great answers. So but no, Loki, I mean, you've been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. And it's been great for you to give me an hour of your time. Hopefully, we can do this again someday soon. And